Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we gain knowledge from it. May we not unnecessarily cover with each other. Peace, peace, peace be on all. So since I am not doing a question answer session on the Sunday and not doing anything on the Saturday because we have the Enneagram going on, I'm making this session Vedanta series question and answer. And as you know, if there are no questions, there are no answers. So I will mute my microphone and give you a chance to formulate some question.
Swamiji, I have a question about right action and how we react to events. And it's related to the hissing versus biting. If one just hisses and others know they just hiss, they'll just be not taken seriously, right? Because you hiss once, you hiss twice, and unless you combine it with Swami Vivekananda's turn the other cheek, but the second time punch them in the face, how does this work? People will abuse you if you just hiss and you don't take further action. And I think it's also related to Mahabharat, where they could have just hissed and move on, but they've taken drastic action there. So I'm trying to understand a bit this. On one side, we don't want conflict. Everyone wants to avoid conflict. But on the other side, it's not possible. At some point, you have to take the right action.
It's a question of finding out what boundaries we should apply. Now, let us apply the same principles to raising a child. At some moment in childhood, the parent will have to clearly set out disciplinary boundaries. In fact, without these boundaries, the child will feel insecure. And so, how to set boundaries, but at the same time, encourage growth and motivation and self-worth. So there's a formula that we have to use, which says that we do the best to encourage each other and see the best in everything. But then at some point in time, we have to understand what our boundaries are and what other people's boundaries are in relation to that. And I would suggest that we reserve hissing for very rare occasions. Earlier on in the day, we were talking a little bit about gurus. We were talking about how teachers have to apply a level of seriousness, a level of discipline, and a level of strictness in a sense. So all of us really have to apply that. The difficulty is the guru has all the knowledge to apply this discipline, and most people, most of us, don't have that. What it means is we have to, in any situation, learn to count to the proverbial 10, step back and make a good assessment. And the assessment has to come to a rational basis so that we work out what is the best thing to do in the circumstance. And the Mahabharata is not a good example in the sense that Arjun is doing his duty. So we have to understand what is the central purpose of our life. Central purpose of our life is to know God, to see God, or to experience the truth in a direct experiential way, to have that revealed to us. Anything that gets in that way, we have to ruthlessly remove. But anything that is helpful, we can embrace it. Now we have to deal with, of course, other circumstances, other people, and so on. And this is where the Enneagram that we have just been doing, the Enneagram process, is useful, because we have to deal with people in a non-standard way. Everybody has a different way of responding. We have to carefully learn to handle people. Same thing with situations. Do it from the side. I think I gave the example many times. In taming an animal, you don't directly move toward it. You look elsewhere. You bring your hand out, gently stroke it behind the ear, something like that. Allow it to lick you a little bit and smell you. And then you can go on with it. And now you're companions, side by side. But if you confront somebody head on, then you're out for provocation. The person I was speaking to this morning said that her guru, when chastising, would not look at the person directly because that would be confrontational. He would have looked elsewhere. But the reprimand was clear. So sometimes we have to measure properly according to the response of the person in a way that we don't trigger an overreaction, but we get the best out of a person, and we do the same thing with a situation. We approach it from a kind of cerebral point of view, but also from the point of view of love. And in a loving circumstance, we create a loving circumstance and try to bypass, as it were, our initial knee-jerk reactions and step back a little bit to assess. For example, supposing your reaction is in a circumstance to write an angry letter, then write your letter, no doubt. Get it all out, but you'll find after a few days, a few things will be modified. Because with the anger comes a lack of love also. But that doesn't mean to say that we should be walked over. We should not be the doormat. We should assert ourselves properly. We should assert our strength. That requires a balance of qualities. Asserting our own inner strength, asserting our faith, asserting our divinity and the divinity in all circumstances, and coming to that. And it is that point alone that acts as a guiding light in all our activities. Arjun was a soldier. He was a military man. His duty was to fight. Another person's duty may be to do clerical work. Another person's duty may be as a school master or mistress. Another person may be an IT specialist, and so on. So in this life, I'm something like a lecturing man, a teacher, and all that. In the next life, I might be a bank clerk. Who knows? But whatever circumstance, situation we find ourselves in, this is what we have to deal with. And we have to do it to the best of our ability. We have to do it as a divine commission. So we have to weigh things up properly and say, okay, these are the boundaries, but by the same token, I am judging that I need to have some inputs. In my own case, for example, right now, there's been a flurry of letters going on, and some of them contain inaccuracies. And I have to take for granted that the person who is writing this is not doing this deliberately. So the first thing is I take the goodwill attitude first, but still I have to weigh up, is it worth making the necessary corrections to the anomalies that have been written? And my judgment is probably, yes, I probably have to do it. But I have to do it in such a way that I'm not stirring up a pot. I'm not stirring up a hornet's nest, actually. And then at some point in time, maybe I am, and I'll do it anyway. And we have to take our lead, for example, from such great apostles as Vivekananda. Today is the Tithi Puja of Swami Saradananda. One characteristic that he had was a level of calmness. He was, in fact, the living embodiment of the ideal of the Bhagavad Gita in this modern age. It is said that to see him was to know how a person of steady wisdom should be like. So he was alike in heat and cold, praise and blame. And his life was tuned to such a high pitch that was beyond the reach of such things. And in spite of all his activities, because he was the general secretary of the whole new movement, the Ramakrishna Order, the Mattva mission, he was the general secretary, the executive, carrying a huge burden. The remarkable legacy that he has is a wonderful biography of Ramakrishna that he put as Leela Prasang, literally the play. So the play of this Divine Master comes out as The Great Master in English, the 2 volumes. But you see, in amidst all that work and effort, we find tremendous tapasya. After Ramakrishna got his Mahasamadhi, entered into that, and they settled in the Baranagaon monastery and all of that, still there was this urge to go and wander. Ramakrishna passed away in 1886. By 1891, they were still wandering, some 5 years later. And they learned a lot, and they met each other on the way as well. But there were some instances like that where Saradananda was in danger. And he took the attitude, well, if I'm here and I can't do anything about it, then let me resign myself to it. Let me adopt a let-go attitude. But if there's something I can do about it, let me assert myself and do it. And so there are many instances like that. We find him mainly in 2 roles, and as secretary of the Ramakrishna Mattva mission and as a spiritual personality also. And as the secretary, he was so much in the love and esteem of the workers that his slightest desire was fulfilled with utmost veneration. There was one instant that I think I have related to you a number of times, and that is that he was in a boat with a friend, and the boat was rocking violently, threatening to overthrow the boat completely. And Swami Saradananda simply sits calmly in the midst of all this. And then he gets asked the question, but aren't you worried that you'll get tossed in the water? And Saradananda's reply was, well, I'll take that up when the time comes. So that was his kind of personal philosophy. He was very intelligent. He had passed exams and so on. And like many of the apostles of Ramakrishna, had a childhood where spirituality was almost second nature to him. He went to college. His teacher was a Catholic priest and was so impressed with Saradananda's inherent spirituality that he taught him the Bible. And Ramakrishna later saw Swami Saradananda as an apostle of Jesus. His teachings reflect his personality. So I'm going to read you some of his teachings. To repeat the Lord's name and to worship him, no special time, he says, and place are necessary. In whatever condition one may be, one can take his name. What a wonderful, simple teaching. People ask me, for example, about meditation, japa, and so on. And of course, japa is something that is an ongoing undercurrent, unspoken, just in the mind, repetition. All you're doing is calling, lovingly calling the divine name. And as with any call of a name, the respondent will respond. And so, without really that background, meditation itself may be a little difficult. Most people who have difficulty in meditation will tell me that the difficulty comes because they're not necessarily in the mood. No, in the beginning, you have to create a mood by creating a place where you can practice. You have to then make sure the place is a suitable environment, that it is made holy. You might engage in some ritualistic action, such as lighting a lamp or a candle, putting a fresh flower there or something of that nature, and making sure your seat is fine. And do not start until you feel the living presence of the divine. And you will feel that. What's in the way of doing that? The mind is in all kinds of turmoil because during the day it hasn't been conditioned. And the way to condition is twofold. One is lovingly repeat the name of God. It's called japa. Do it constantly. The other is feeling, seeing and feeling the divine in everyone you encounter and in all circumstances you encounter. So any reaction such as hissing will have to be weighed up. Is it loving hissing? When you discipline a child, is it love or anger? You see, it has to be love. No parent should discipline a child with anger in the form of either physical contact or shouting. The main thing is you encourage the person, coaching them for improvement if necessary, and applying the boundary limits where necessary, and making sure people understand and know these boundaries limits. And then he goes on to say, through selfless work, the mind gets purified. So not just sitting and it's working, not just sitting, not just reciting, but is also selfless work. Now that doesn't mean to say necessary altruistic work, social work, and so on. What it means is that every single activity really can be a form of worship. When the mind becomes pure, there arise knowledge and devotion in it. Knowledge is the very nature of the self, but being covered with ignorance, it's not manifest. The object of selfless work is to remove this ignorance. So all work should be transformed in this way. Some people may say that seems to be quite difficult. Yes, but you see, if you apply a level of concentration to every unit activity here and now, even if you can, before the activity, you make an offering, a prayer offering. After the activity, you do the same thing. But first you have to attain knowledge, he says. That means the importance of listening to these talks or reading a scripture or something of that nature, something that touches you. And so until after repetition, there is at least a knowledge of the principles. And after attaining knowledge, when one returns to this world of diversity, in other words, going a little further, and having that knowledge which is profound, that is stable, that is inward, that is a place, if you will, where there's a central poise, a feeling of poise. And so when you return to the world, when you come out away from this level of this area of poise, what will you see? You'll see the world of diversity. And then you will see everything as before, no doubt. But it will no longer be you'll no longer be attached to it in the same way. You'll no longer interpret it in the same way. And after you realize God, this is the stage of growth, then the world seems to be just a mere appearance, a series of waves that come and go, a series of scenes that shift on, like changing scenery in a theater. The whole thing goes blank, and then you hear some shuffling around, lights come on, scenery changed. So there's nothing in it that can attract one if one views it like this. You may simply enjoy all the drama that is going on before you if you can cultivate the art of doing that. Many of your mental aberrations will go. But what really counts, he says, in the spiritual domain is unswerving faith. What is faith? Faith in what? Faith in the words of the Guru, faith in the Lord, and faith in the scriptures. Now, of course, Swami Vivekananda would add to that faith in yourself. But what is yourself? The fundamental self and God, that is the same thing at the most fundamental level. Then he also says, in recalling his own learning process, that the master would compare the mind to a packet of mustard seeds. And if the packet is once untied, the seeds get scattered in all directions. And how difficult it is to collect them again. And some are perhaps lost forever. But absolute faith makes the impossible possible. I repeat it. Absolute faith makes the impossible or seeming impossible possible. Then he goes on, no man is wholly above defects, but some try to get rid of them, while others do not feel any need for it. And since you have taken refuge at the divine feet, then you certainly feel the need of eliminating them and have also the will to do so. And the Lord too will grant you the strength for this. We too have taken shelter under him, he says, and are trying to free ourselves from all our shortcomings. Now, in all of this, in faith, strength and resolve is necessary. If you pray for anything, pray for faith and pray for devotion and pray for strength. Because what is the opposite is weakness. What do we mean by weakness? It means that we misinterpret our own being to such an extent that we get affected by it. We get blown away by the wind, here and there. There's no stability for us. Whatever work stands in the way of God realization and increased discontent is bad work, and you should wholly discard that. And some people may be in a situation where their work seems unpleasant. So the first thing would be try to have a different attitude toward the work itself, because particularly if it's obligatory work and there's nothing else that you can do. But then if it's dragging the mind down to the extent that it stands in the way of what? Not your happiness, but God realization, and it increases discontent, then see if you can shift, find a different area, and you see what will faith do, make the impossible possible. What are the elements of doing that? Imagination, visualization, believing it will happen, and registering it all to the divine account. All souls are ever free. That's why all minds are hankering for freedom. A true leader is a person who never hampers that craving for attaining freedom. The only concern that such a person has being to see it, to it that when the person concerned gets freedom, he doesn't misuse it. What we call Brahman, the absolute, the ultimate, and Brahman's power, Shakti in Tantric language, are non-different. It's like fire and the power of combustion. Once Swami Saradananda, who was then Sharat, he mentioned to Ramakrishna, my Ishtadevata is Ganesha. Ramakrishna immediately says, no, it's not. It is Shiva. Imagine me to be Shakti and you to be Shiva. See? That is, you are the ideal. You are the Ishtadevata. Put yourself in the Ishtadevata's position. Try to see from time to time what things look like from the royal throne. Your Ishtadevata, you yourself sit there at the most fundamental level. Merge yourself, sink down deeply into your own essence. And that's what he was saying. Make Shiva your Ishtadevata, your ideal, and then think of yourself as Shiva. And then think of me as Shakti, giving you the grace or expressing the grace that is always within you. So Brahman and Brahman's power are non-different, like fire and its power to burn. The scriptures speak of this Brahman as the cosmic person, what we call Virat, and the power also associated with him as the mother of the universe. That's why the presiding deity of Gayatri is sometimes spoken of as the cosmic person, and sometimes as the mother of the universe. And that's why there is no contradiction in imagining either way, but imagine. Use the full capacity of your imagination and your imagination, your image making to combat, to neutralize this world. And in assessing whether you should hiss or whether you should, well, you should never bite, but whether hissing should go on and to what level and what volume, then you should try and see whether your response is not from what we call verbal delusion, imagination. Patanjali calls it verbal delusion. That is, imagining something. Oh, I'm sure this person is against me. Well, have another look at this and see. Is it in your imagination? They're all looking at me. Are you sure? If you're not sure, assume it is not so. Assume that it might well be your imagination. And if it's your imagination, either way, assert your strength of your own divinity. To have strong longing for God and feel ill at ease just because God has not been realized are, however, all dependent on the divine grace. So pray to the divine for this divine grace with all earnestness. Whatever you desire, you can freely pray, and you'll get it. You need not meditate long, says Swami Saradananda, on your Guru, but just remember and salute him or her, and then spend most of the time in the meditation of your chosen deity. Some forums are asking, can you give us more specific instructions on meditation? And there Swami Saradananda is supplying this piece of information. You need not meditate long on your Guru, but just remember and salute this Guru. Then spend most of the time in the meditation of your chosen deity. Meditate on the deity as you go on repeating his name, because japa is also a form of meditation. And since past mental tendencies cannot assert themselves during the performance of your duties, you should apply your whole mind, he says, to them. Selfless work is the best means of winning a victory over past tendencies. And this is quite subtle in the sense that any activity, no matter how mundane, can be selfless. In other words, I'm not doing the activity, I'm not using my own energy, and I'm not gaining the rewards for myself. There's no me or I in the whole thing. So these are some of the words and teachings of Swami Saradananda. Did I answer your question okay? And then are there any final questions?
Thank you, Swamiji. I need to meditate on your answer.
Okay, good. Good answer to my answer. Okay. Well, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.